Hello and welcome back. Now let's continue the journey of Spring Core. We are learning the Spring Boot. We have developed the applications, and now in this application we will understand the important annotations such as qualifier, primary and auto wire. We have seen about the auto wiring in the XML approach as well as in the annotation approach also, for which I have taken the same example which we have taken earlier in this entire series. Those who don't know, I would like to just give a walkthrough on this. I have two service classes and I have followed the strategy design pattern to develop those service classes. I have coded to interface. We have an interface here, and with this interface I have specified what is my requirement, right? I have specified that this method has to be implemented, and there are two courses which are implementing this particular method. I'll say here number one is Java course. You can see class Java implements I course, and also we have one more class which is Spring Boot. Spring Boot implements I course. These two classes are implementing I course and give the implementation for the method of that particular interface. Now with that, if you know the basic Java also, now Spring Boot class as well as the Java class, they are of type I course. That means both of them are implementing I course, and the parent to Java class and Spring Boot class is I course. So these two classes are of type I course, and the top of these classes I have used the stereotype annotation service. When to use the service annotation we have understood earlier also, and it is just that we have some business logic here. This business logic can be used by other classes, some important logic of this application, and I want this class to be this object to be created and managed by the Spring IOC container. We have to use some of the stereotype annotation, and since we have some important logic within this class, we have used service. The significance of service we have seen earlier also. You can see Spring Boot also service. Since I have used service here, that means the object of this class will be created by Spring IOC container. It is created and managed by the Spring framework. Now I would like to go to my class, a T-shaped skills class. Inside this class, whatever methods, a business logic which is present inside the Spring Boot class, inside the Java class, I would like to invoke. That means T-shaped class is using the services which are coded inside the Spring Boot and Java, and I have created the reference of I course because T-shape and Java, both of them are of I course type because they are implementing this I course interface. Great. And using this course I'm invoking this method. Wonderful. Now I have to perform the dependency injections, and since right now all these classes, all these objects are managed by Spring framework, they are called as beans. I will say here I want one object to be injected here. You can go with the field injection, setter injection, or the constructor injection. Suppose if you want to go to the constructor injection, I'll go to the top of this class and I will say here auto wire. Similarly, we had seen in the XML approach. Now I would like to show with the annotation approach. I'll say here auto wire. Great. The moment I say here auto wire, that means I am asking my Spring framework plus please perform the dependency injection using this setter. Inside the setter, we are accepting one type of input. What type of input? I course type of input. Now tell me, the top of the Java class also I have used service. Top of the Spring Boot class also I have used service. Great. That means my IOC container is maintaining the bean of Spring Boot also, maintaining the bean of Java also. And these both classes are of type I course. This is also are of type I course, and this Java class is also of type I course. That means if I ask my Spring that please perform the dependency injection using this setter, now there are two objects available with the Spring framework which is of type I course. One is Java, one is Spring. Now which object my Spring IOC container has to inject here? Which object will be injected? There will be ambiguity. None of the object will be injected. Something similar we had seen earlier also in the XML approach. I would like to go here, right click. I will say here run as the Java application. If I have to execute this application, let me save and execute it. And you can see on the console, let me show you on the console. And we have an issue here, application failed to start. And you can see we will be getting the same. T-shaped skills required a single bean but found two. What do you mean by that? Here, if I have to go back, I have asked my Spring framework to perform the dependency injection. That means inject such a object which is of type I course. Now with the Spring IOC container, there are two objects which is of type iCourse. One is Java bean, one is Spring Boot bean, right? Now out of two which I have to inject, the Spring IOC container is confused and it is not able to inject. Now I'll go any of this class, I'll go here and I will use one annotation called as primary. Like the way in the XML approach we had used the primary attribute, here we would like to use the primary annotation. That means I'm asking, whenever the situation of dependency injection comes, please inject Java object. This is the primary object. That's the meaning of it. Now, when the Spring IOC container will perform the dependency injection, at that moment, Spring will inject Java object here, because at the top of Java bean, I have told primary. It is a primary. Whenever the situation of dependency injection comes into picture, please do inject Java object, like the way we had used primary attribute in our XML approach. Now, I would like to go back to my main class and I would like to say here, container dot get bean. Of course, same code. I would like to say here, please get me the bean of T-shape skills, because there is some business method which I want to invoke manually. I would like to just go back here and say dot class, and of course I would like to just import it, and it will give me some method. Maybe I'll say here T-shape. Okay, T-shaped, and it will give me the bean of this, and using this bean I would like to just invoke, I'll say here maybe T-shape dot. I would like to buy the course and I'll pass some amount here. Okay, I'll say here 444.4, any amount. Okay, it will give me a Boolean value. Same, the remaining story is same as what we have seen earlier. If you are a part of the journey, even if you are not a part of journey, it should not create any problem to you. This all the basics of Java. I will say here, if the status is true, I would like to just say system.out.println. I will say here course purchased, or I'll say here else system.out.println. I will say here fail to buy the course. Great. Right, I'll say here fail to buy the course. Any message of your own choice. It should not be creating any problem. Now I would like to go back here, right click, run as the Java application or the Spring Boot application based on the IDE which you are using here. And if I have to execute this, you can see all the beans have been created. Great, because we have applied stereotype annotation at the top of those classes, and setter is called for the setter injection. And you can see Java course method. That means whatever logic which is written inside this, it is getting printed. That means this method is getting invoked. If this method is getting invoked, that shows here which object is injected. This Java object is injected, because there are two eligible objects present. Spring Boot parent is also iCourse and Java parent is also iCourse. And here if I have to ask, please inject any object which is of iCourse, both of them are eligible. Earlier it was creating any problem, but now it could able to inject because of the primary. Apart from primary, we can use one more annotation which is very popular annotation which we use here, which is qualifier. I can just go here and I will say here qualifier. I'll say here qualifier, and I'll say here out of two, which object, which bean is qualified. I'll go here and I'll give the bean ID. If you want, you can specify the bean ID at the time of using this stereotype annotation like this. If you don't give, whatever is the class name, camel case of the class name will be the bean ID, which automatically Spring Framework will create. Right now I myself is creating this Java. Maybe I'll say here J. That means this is the bean ID. If suppose I have not given this value, then automatically whatever is the camel case of the class name, that will be the bean ID, about which we have seen earlier also. So the bean ID will be Java. I would like to ask here, please inject the Java object. Using the qualifier also, you can do this. I'll say here, and let me go back and execute this application once again. And if I have to run this, you can see Java object is injected. Java course. If you want, you can give the name of Spring Boot. What is the camel case of the Spring Boot? Because I have not specified any bean ID here. If you want, you can specify. If you don't specify, the camel case of the Spring Boot, the camel case of the Spring Boot would be maybe I'll say a Spring Boot. This is the camel case of the Spring Boot with the bean ID. Okay, I've asked please inject the Spring Boot object. Right click, run as Java application. If I have to execute this, you can see Spring Boot course is successfully purchased. And this qualifier annotation and auto wiring you can do at the field level also. So far we have seen only setter injection and the constructor injection. You can do the field injection at the top of field also directly. You can specify. I would like to save this, and maybe just to have some changes, I would like to change it to Java object, And I'll say out of two objects, please qualify Java at the time of dependency injection, at the time of automatic dependency injection. That's the meaning of it. I'll say right click, and especially if you're a part of this journey from the beginning, you must be knowing it. And I'll say here Java. Great. You can see Java object is injected. And one important point is that this qualifier annotation you cannot apply to a constructor. To the constructor, you can say auto, but not the qualifier. It is disallowed. So in that case, you can apply to the parameter level. At this level, you can apply whenever you're performing the constructor injection. You cannot use qualifier. Qualifier can be applied to the field directly, can be applied to a setter, but not to a constructor. That is very, very important, message. And you can apply to the parameter variable level. Okay. I would like to go back here and right click. And before I run this, I would like to show one more point that what if we have both primary and the qualifier? Whether qualifier will dominate primary or primary will dominate qualifier. I'll say here qualifier, and within this I would like to say here maybe Spring Boot. Please inject Spring Boot. Great. And if I have to go back, Java have applied primary. Now please inject this. This is primary. And what did I say here? Qualifier Spring Boot. Right. So now qualifier will dominate the primary annotation or primary will dominate the qualifier is what we may have to see here. I'll say right click, run as the Java application. If I have to execute this, and please do see here, Spring Boot course is getting injected. That means if you have both primary and qualifier will be dominating the primary. So the more valuable annotation here is qualifier. Qualifier annotation will give the preference over the primary annotation. I hope you could able to understand. So whenever you perform the dependency injection and if there is any ambiguity, if multiple beans are eligible for a dependency injection, in that case you have to use the primary and the qualifier annotation. Especially if you're a part of this journey from the beginning, I'm pretty sure you could able to understand everything. If not, please do watch whatever videos we have covered so far. So consider please following me on the Instagram, also on the LinkedIn, and do join our WhatsApp channel, wherein we'll be sharing the Udemy courses. I'll not be sharing the Udemy courses free coupons directly on the platforms because it is getting viral and people not from the Java background, and just because it is free, they are trying to take up the course and they are giving the negative reviews. They are not even from the background of Java. So I don't want that to happen. So I want only serious learners. So those who are part of the WhatsApp channel, for them, in future, all my Udemy courses free coupons also would be given. Fine. So thank you again for joining me in this video. We will meet again in next video.